You're listening to The Coffee Hour. I'm Andy Bates.
I'm Sarah Gulseth.
It is Wednesday, February 19th.
We have a lot of books in studio today.
We do. You know
I'm
what?
pretty excited about
I think
this.
we should call it Literary February.
Hey!
Do you like that?
I like that. Literary February.
Something there.
No one knows how to pronounce February anyway, so.
February.
February.
There's a good meme about that on Facebook right now. It's like this bird that doesn't know how to say it. It's funny.
It is February 19th, Literary February. We're going to talk with Dr. Baue today from Pergola Press and some of his great books, some novels that I'm excited to share. We're excited to share with you today. Thanks to Concordia University, Wisconsin for supporting the Coffee Hour. Find out more about Concordia University, Wisconsin at cuw.edu.
Live uncommon.
In studio, here in the flesh, the Reverend Dr. Fritz Baue.
That's me.
That's you. Author, musician, pastor, educator.
Is there anything you don't do?
Do you play basketball? Maybe.
Used to.
See?
Of course.
Of course.
Yeah, football.
Yeah.
Ah, yeah.
I played baseball at the seminary.
Aha.
That's where I developed my love for
Preacher.
baseball. We were playing. I was the most important guy on the team. They had 14
So humble.
guys signed up. This is after Seminex, and they needed one more person to field a team, and I was that person. So I didn't get much playing time, but we were playing Washington University, and we were up 10-0, and all of a sudden our pitching fell apart, and we kept loaded the bases and walked in 1 run, 2 runs, 3 runs, and then they started hitting, and we ended up losing 20-10.
Oh, no.
I've loved baseball ever since. It's just crazy. Anything can happen. And baseball is a theme that runs through all 5 novels that I have written, 3 of which are in print. One, the baseball novel, book number 4, we're working on now, and that's going to include a complete game and a scorecard with all the plays and everything. And then after that, it's on to book number 5, which is set in imaginary country in Africa. And I wrote that when I was in Ethiopia on a teaching mission. So baseball is a theme that runs through all the books.
Who knew? And it all came from stories from playing preacher baseball.
Yeah.
But tell us a little bit about your background in the arts and across the board, literature, theology, music,
Right.
all of those.
Right. We were talking before the show, Andy, about if I were smart, I would have just gone bachelor, master, doctor in one direction that I could specialize in and make a career out of it. But instead, I've got training and experience in education and degrees in music, theology, and literature, and I produce things. I've got a stack of stuff here that I do straight music. Here's a CD of instrumental pieces. I do like music and theology. Here's guitar instrumentals of well-known hymns of the church. I do music and literature. Here's songs that I've written, such as "Redheaded Women Always Break My Heart." That's not
great theology,
not a church song. Then I've got humor. I've got the Epistles of Herman Nudix, which is a character that follows me around. I got an endorsement from Martin E. Marty on that one, and then straight theology. I got a book on creation that I've done, and the spiritual society, which answers the question: if postmodernism comes after modernism, what comes after postmodernism? So, and then there's the novels. Oh yes, and then there's music and theology and literature, and I've got brought a little show and tell with hymns that I've written besides What Is This Bread?
Which is in Lutheran Service Book.
Which is in LSB 629. And so there's all kinds of things. So I've diversified instead of specializing. And I'm 73 years old. now, and I've been accelerating. And right now, I'm just about at cruising altitude, producing things in all these different ways. But I don't know. God gives me this spark of creativity, and the muse grabs hold of me, and off we gallop.
Yeah, and I've heard you talk several times about stories and literature and the value of storytelling, the value of literature.
Yeah.
What actually is literature? What makes good literature?
Well, what is the Bible but a collection of stories that are true, and they're actual things that happen, such as Joshua making the sun stand still, or at least from our perspective, he makes the sun stand still. If you broke it down into scientific analysis, it would be impossible. For example, the parables of Jesus, the story of creation, which is a story that God gave to Moses, because nobody was there at the time, at least until the sixth day of creation. And so the stories of things that actually happened, like Noah's flood, but have interpretive value and connotations that can be texts to preach on, all of which point to Jesus Christ in different aspects. Noah and his family passed through water from the old world to the new, just as we pass through water in the sacrament of holy baptism from the domain of the devil into the kingdom of God. And Christ's baptism, it actually happened, but that's when he received our sin and we received his righteousness in that divine exchange. So stories, particularly in the Bible, this is what we read to our children when they're small, with lots of illustrations. But in a contemporary sense, Sir Philip Sidney, who was one of the great poets of it used to be called the English Renaissance or the early modern period, said the purpose, in his defense of poesy, Sidney said, the purpose of all art is to instruct and delight. And this is why we turn to poetry, to literature, Shakespeare, Donne, Herbert, the other poets, to receive instruction, moral instruction, and also just delight in the Shakespeare play. It's funny, it's sad, but we're learning something. I wrote an article once called Redemptive Themes in Shakespeare, and I found that each of the 7 deadly sins is illustrated by one or another of Shakespeare's plays. Lust, for example, Antony and Cleopatra. Pride, Coriolanus. Gluttony, Falstaff, and so forth. And there were resurrection scenes in Shakespeare also, and Twelfth Night and other plays. So anyway, there's the power of story in a play, in a novel, and so forth, to instruct and delight. But today, the scene in literature is more to subvert and offend rather than instruct and delight.
So how do you build on that, instruct and delight in your literature, in your stories?
Right. Well, thanks, Andy. You put the T-ball right there.
You're welcome.
That's what we're here for.
Knock it right out. Well, my aim is to instruct and delight. And so I've written this brilliant series of 5 novels. They've all been written. 3 are in print. Did I say that already?
It's fine.
I don't remember. Anyway, so I'm trying to sell some books here. But, for example, book 1 is The Pilgrim, and this started out as an autobiographical novel, which, a lot of first novels are that way. But it became less and less autobiographical as it went along, and as character developed, the character of Paul Gottlieb, as a young man growing up in the 1960s, and he's getting all these influences. He's a Missouri Synod kid from Perryville, Missouri, East Perry County, and all my books are centered in Missouri Synod Lutheran theology, people, culture, conflict, and cooking. I've even got a recipe book in the back of one of the novels. But for example, in The Pilgrim, the opening sentence is Strike eins. So what does that say?
Strike one.
Yeah, strike one. But strike eins, you've got an English word, strike, and you've got a German word, eins. So here's right away, I got two words in the opening sentence that set the scene for everything that's coming after it, as far as its juxtaposition and the irritation of rubbing of German culture and American culture, and how that plays out in the lives of the characters. So this is authentic because people that I've known that grew up in that culture, German American culture in Perry County and other places, used to play baseball like that. And remember a time, as one fellow said, when the games were conducted with combination of bad German and bad English. So, du bist out, and strike zwei and so forth. And so that kind of banter back and forth. Also, in the beginning of The Pilgrim, it starts with a baseball game, a round-robin baseball game. And that was one of the last things I added to this book, because of what it did. It put all the characters in all 5 novels on stage at one time, either in person or the father or grandfather, grandparents of characters that were yet to come. And so that was another thing that I did with that. And let me just read a little bit, if I can, because there's a lot of theology in these books. There's a lot of cooking.
There is. I've read this one.
And food, okay. Yeah.
So I'm going to be
tell
hungry.
everybody how great it is while I'm looking for this. Oh, Satchel Paige. I got permission from the group that handles the image of Satchel Paige.
Oh.
And the family gave me permission, cost me a few bucks, to use the name of and the character of Satchel Paige in a fictional sense. And so Satchel Paige teaches some pitching to Earl Gottlieb, who's the uncle of Paul Gottlieb, but Earl shows up in one or another way in all 5 books. He's a continuing character, so the influence of Satchel Paige and pitching and baseball runs out through here. Okay, so young Paul, he's a pitcher for Southeast Missouri State College in Cape Girardeau, Missouri. And so he says here, he says, what did I care? The life of baseball had gotten me into college. The life of the mind had gotten college into me. I had found a new faith. And here's a little thing. He says, revolutionary cocktail. It's kind of a poem. Shot of Darwin, jigger of Thoreau, Marxist beer and Leninist vodka, shaken not stirred, dilute with Pete Seeger, sweeten with Joan Baez, add bitters, Kerouac, Ginsberg, Ferlinghetti, dash of Zen, add ice-cold logic, shake, rattle, and roll, and throw in somebody's face.
You wouldn't want to drink that.
So that's his, yeah. So there's a description of the meal here that goes on and on and on. But the theme of meals, I've found in retrospect, is something that's very important in these books at certain significant times, and it reveals character, and significant exchanges take place. There's arguments, there's reconciliation, all kinds of good things, like the meal in the film Babette's Feast, if you've ever seen that. It's something that's a redemptive meal in the context of a gourmet French dinner among the Lutherans in northern Denmark.
It always comes back to food, doesn't it?
It's always about food. So if you want to know the rest of the story of The Pilgrim, which is the first book in the Diamond Quintet,
yes.
If you want to know the rest of the story, Dr. Baue brought along a copy to give away today.
Yes.
I brought more than one.
Oh, okay. So the first two callers, Jenny's ready to take calls. So the first two callers, 314-821-0850 or 1-800-730-2727, 1-800-730-2727. For the first two callers, we'd be glad to give you a copy of The Pilgrim from Dr. Baue. You're listening to The Coffee Hour. Again, 1-800-730-2727. I'm Andy Bates.
I'm Sarah Gulseth.
We'll be right back.
This Wednesday, February 19th, 2020, KFUO Radio thanks our day sponsor, Mary Hamilton of Redbud, Illinois. Mary made a gift to KFUO Radio in loving memory of her mother, Nina Giebert, and in gratefulness for the Christian life she lived and God's blessings upon her family. Thank you, Mary Hamilton, for helping us share the gospel and for being today's KFUO day sponsor.
Hi, I'm Pastor Mark Hawkinson, host of Moments of Assurance. Jesus said, if anyone enters by me, he shall be saved. You can help us continue to get that message out around the globe while there's still time. One way is to become a church or organization of the week. For a gift of just $595, your church will receive 35 30-second announcements during the week of your choice, identifying your church, as well as upcoming events and happenings. And your pastor or a representative from your church, they may record those announcements, or we can produce them ourselves. Either way. In addition, your pastor or representative will have the opportunity to be on one of KFUO's programs. It's a wonderful way to expand your mission outreach and to help KFUO Radio to do the same. For further information, call me, Mark, at 314-996-1520 or mark.hawkinson at kfuo.org.
We are approaching the close of the Epiphany season. So, for our next Law and Gospel Bible Study Wednesday, we will be taking a look at a passage from the Bible that once more manifests Jesus Christ as our Savior.
Listen to Law and Gospel weekday mornings beginning at 9:30 on KFUO.
Welcome back to the Coffee Hour. I'm Andy Bates.
I'm Sarah Gulseth.
We're talking with the Reverend Dr. Fritz Baue, author of the Diamond Quintet series. And the first book today that we're taking a look at is The Pilgrim. And congratulations to our two winners. Jenny's gathering that information right now. So the contest has closed. Thank you so much for calling in today. However,
we have more.
So watch.
So I'm putting one on our Insta story right now.
So Instagram.
So there's one.
Watch Insta story and Facebook.
Facebook, yeah.
All right. Instagram and Facebook. Watch for that as well.
It's in both of our stories. So on Instagram and Facebook, look at our story and reply to that story.
That was fast.
It's instant. It's Instagram.
And now for a word from our sponsor. Are you suffering from neuritis and nostalgia? You need a good book to put you to sleep at night. And I have 5 books, actually 3 that are in print. But if I could, seriously, trying to sell some books, The number one is The Pilgrim, set in the 1960s, and it's about a young man, Paul, who has got his quest with looking for the answer. What is real? What is authentic? And kind of, against the commercial and phoniness of post-war society. And then all the characters in all the books are interrelated. And so I had to create like a wall chart, so I know who married whom and who got divorced from whom and when and where and all this that happened. But the second book is set in Tucson, Arizona, which I wrote when I was living out there in the 1980s, early 90s. And that's Flight, and that's the story of a LCMS pastor who is a Seminex graduate, but colloquies in, so he's got this ambivalent attitude toward the Missouri Synod, even though he's related to all these other Missouri Synod people from East Perry County. And he has all kinds of conflicts and problems. His wife is coming down with multiple sclerosis, which is very hard to diagnose. And he thinks about escape, hence the title, Flight. And then he wins a new Corvette in a convenience store drawing, and what that does to his conflicts. And then number 3 is called The Clubhouse. That just came out, and that's the story of a young LCMS pastor, theologian, who goes to Europe to study for a doctorate in theology. He falls in love with the wrong woman. And Pastor Asbury said, these are not safe books. They're not for the faint of heart. In other words, I depict sin and grace, sin as it is, and grace as it is. So that this young man and his beloved father a love child, but the problem is he's white and she's black. And he's common and she's royalty. She's a princess of an African country. And the Muslim assassins are after her and after the child and after young John. And so how that all plays out, there's a lot of action, sword fights and things in that book. Then number 4 is called The Last Game, and that's your basic Lutheran apocalyptic baseball novel.
Basic.
Yeah, basic.
The typical,
And there's this storm that's advancing on this baseball game between a local church amateur beer league team, the Johnnies from St. John's Lutheran Church. This is also in Perry County. And this semi-pro cult team that has moved into the area. And that is a complete game with a scorecard and the love story and the intrigue and the theology woven into between pitches and innings and so forth. And then the last book is called Ross Josiah. Ross is an honorific, like Prince or a colonel or general or something like that. And Josiah is a character's name. And Josiah, in Book 5, is the love child that was born in Book 3. So now he is back, and he's a grown man, and he has to go to this country that he's never been to because he's been brought up in America and England, and kill a lion with a spear that has come down to his descent in royalty from Moses. Because you remember in the book of Numbers, chapter 12, says Moses married an Ethiopian wife. And what happened to her and her children and descendants. So that's what Book 5 is about. And so if anybody's interested, I'm offering subscriptions to all 5 at the same time. I'll just send them to you as they come out. So anyway, that's a summary of the Diamond Quintet. Diamond as in baseball, Quintet because there's 5 books.
Simple enough. And I want to ask another question, but we only have a minute
and a half.
A minute and a half left.
I'll talk fast.
In just a minute and a half, how can we learn to appreciate good stories and all of this literature and just stories in that we come across in our lives?
When I'm writing, I'm living in a dream. I'm like in the cloud, not the cloud of transfiguration, but a cloud of creativity. and I'm writing words in what I'm seeing, the action and the characters. The idea is that the reader will read the words and also enter the dream from the other end and get wrapped up in the story, and then they read straight through, like one of my readers did, and read through the clubhouse, and as soon as she got done, she started over again and read it again. She was in the cloud. Mm-hmm. And just let it flow over you, and then try to analyze it later on. But just be a listener and get wrapped up in the story like children do. They get that look in their eye, you know, and all of a sudden they're in the dream.
Mm-hmm.
You can find Dr. Baue's books at pergolapress.com.
That's right. Yeah.
Is that where you write, under the pergola? Is that where that name comes from?
Yeah.
Pergola Press.
Smoke my pipe.
Pergolapress.com. The Reverend Dr. Fritz Baue. Thank you so much for being our guest today, Dr. Baue.
Sarah, thank you so much. Privilege.
And congratulations to Carol and James, and also to the rest of you. Follow on Instagram and Facebook. Check out the stories there if you'd like an opportunity to win. Again, pergolapress.com. I'm Andy Bates.
I'm Sarah Golseth.
The Coffee Hour with Andy and Sarah is a production of KFUO. To support the Coffee Hour and KFUO Radio, visit KFUO.org. You can also text KFUO to 41444 or send an email to gifts@KFUO.org. And you can call us at 800-844-0524. KFUO. Christ for you, anytime, anywhere.